Hey friends, I am Eric Hultgren, Director of Social Media and Brand Strategy for MLive and the MLive Media Group. And I'm very excited today to share with you our latest findings in travel sentiment for Michiganders in the fall of 2021. And before we do that, let's talk a little bit about brand. So a brand, as Professor Scott Galloway would say, is not something you can drop on your foot. No, it's how your consumer feels about your product or service. And then you take that ideology and you put it up against the brand hurdles put forth by David Akers. How are you different than your competitors in the marketplace? Are you relevant to your consumers right this very second? And what are you doing to make sure that your business goes on and on forever? And obviously, we're here to talk about our customers. And how our customers navigate through the world has gotten a little bit different. But the three things remain true to how a consumer thinks about a product or service, and by that, a brand. The first thing is they have a feeling about that product or service, which we're calling branding, right? And then the second thing they're going to do is that they're going to tell themselves a mythology or a story about why they want to get involved in that product or service. And then finally, they might get around to the third step, which is facts. And so if we know that feelings and stories lead the way when consumers are making a decision, we have to get better at telling stories. And with that, I'm going to tell you two stories, and then I'm going to share with you the data that we've accumulated from the MLive readers. The first story, though, is the parable from Cicero of the sword of Damocles. Now, if you're not familiar with this parable, here's how the story goes. So King Dionysius has these courtiers around him. Courtiers are essentially people who are famous for the sake of being famous. Think ancient Kardashians. So these ancient Kardashians are hanging around. One of them is named Damocles. And one day he comes to the king and he says, "My life would be complete if I could just switch places with you. Everything I've done in my life would be wrapped up in a nice little bow if I could just sit in the throne for one day and feel what it feels like to be king." So King Dionysius sees an opportunity to teach a lesson to Damocles. And so he says, absolutely, we can switch. But here is the catch. The catch is I'm going to hang a sword, pommel down, meaning the blade pointing towards your head, with a single horsehair holding it to the ceiling. And what that's going to signify is that during my time as king, I've made a number of enemies, and this job is very dangerous. And the decisions you make have bare, crazy consequences. And with that, we can switch places. And when I teach this at the college level, I switch this up a little bit because typically when I'm teaching at the college level, we're talking about personal branding or branding in and of itself. And with that, I will teach it as the sword of engagement. And by that, I mean, if you're building your brand, personal or otherwise, based on a single metric, and that metric engagement, how many likes, comments, or shares that you get, that you end up in this position where you've got a sword hanging over your head, and the only way that you can get more engagement is to turn up the volume. This is, of course, how you get the Paul brothers. And no matter what you think about Logan or Jake Paul, what you can know is that these two gentlemen have built an entire brand based on engagement, ratcheting it up, making it louder, getting more in your face. And what happens with that with 100% certainty is they have to get in trouble because they have to push the envelope because they have to get more engagement. But there's another way. And that other way is another parable of ancient wisdom, and that is the story of the wandering rabbi. And the story of the wandering rabbi goes like this. There was a rabbi who would wander the countryside and meditate on the Gospels. He would walk and he would think, and he would walk and he would think. And one day he comes upon a giant wall, and at the top of the wall is a Roman sentry who sees him coming far off, and when he's close enough, he yells, "Who are you and why are you here?" And the rabbi looks up, and the rabbi smiles, and he says, "Do you get paid for this job?" And the sentry says, "Of course I do. I get 5 denarii a day." And the rabbi smiles again and looks back up at the sentry and says, "I will pay you double that amount each day if when I wake you ask me those 2 questions. Who am I and why am I here?" And when we're building digital campaigns to connect with consumers, we have to think about this. It becomes really important. Who are we and why are we here? Because at the end of the day, we know that engagement isn't as effective as making a deep, meaningful connection. And we've learned that over the last 18 months. So what we did is we connected with our audience, and 2,583 of them filled out a survey about their travel intent. And I'm going to share that data with you right now. So the first question we asked them was, are you working remotely? And you can see it's kind of a mixed bag, right? 52% saying yes, 47.8% are in an office, which sounds magical, right? And when we asked one step further, is those of you who are in a remote workplace, would you be willing to work someplace else for an extended period of time? And 20.2% said yes. Those are the people like myself who, quite honestly, are tired of being in their basement, right? They want to go do something else. So if you're in the travel space and you were at one point doing remote work marketing, you might want to bring that back because there's a segment of the population who wants to hear from you. The next question, are you comfortable participating in indoor activities? 49.7% say absolutely, 45% say maybe, and 5.3% say not at all. Now, what I see in this piece of data is that we need to be very mindful about that 5.3% and make sure that we're taking care to include them in the conversations, even if they're not comfortable coming, to say, these are the steps that we're doing to make sure that travelers are safe. We know that maybe you're not comfortable with that, but we want you to know these are the steps that we're taking. And with the somewhats, continue to reiterate the steps that you're taking to make people safe. And with the totalies, that 49.7%, see if you can get them to tell stories about what it was like to be in your establishments doing those events. Next question was, planning on attending any conferences or large gatherings? This is nearly right down the middle. And what I see here is a lot of, maybe, right? And so in that data is, of course, people who aren't comfortable in going to large events, thus webinars. But also in there are people who have 18 months to think about the conferences they were going to and think maybe, I don't know, was that the best use of my time? So if you are doing large-scale events or conferences, maybe now's the time to rework them, to see what things you can do to put in those conferences so that people walk away and go, that was an amazing experience. I can't wait to do it again. Next question. How far in advance are you making travel plans? 34.4% say 2 months, 8 weeks, which is awesome in the state of Michigan because we've got some seasonality and some cyclicality. So they're making really tight window decisions as to where they're going to go and when they're going to do it. And the rest of that time becomes a mixed bag with 6 months being kind of the longest tail there. And then you've got 8 months and then 2 months in there as well. In the next 6 months, do you have any travel plan? 84.4% say yes for leisure. You're not seeing a lot of work travel, but that does not mean we're not going to see work travel continue or even return. So we've got to be prepared to pivot our marketing to invite those people as well as business travel increases, as safety changes and all of those sorts of things happen. But 84.4 want to get out and do things, right? That's that consumer rage spending you've heard of. People just want to go do something, and perhaps they want to do it with you. Where are you traveling? Now, I know how math works, and we allowed people to answer more than once, which is why this cell doesn't add to 100. But 95% of respondents are going to travel in the state of Michigan, which means we can talk to them and tell them why they should choose to come visit us, which is super exciting. How will you travel? Most by car, maybe some plane, not so much bus. Right? But when I see this as a marketer, and I know a lot of people in the travel segment have had a tremendous year. And when you're having a tremendous year, just like if you're in the real estate segment, I think this is a time for us to experiment. So when I see people are comfortable in their car, as they have been for all of COVID, that excites me because that makes me think about other ways in which I can play in the marketing space. And when we look at the Gas Buddy data, we see that people are staying closer to home. So they want to be in their car, but they're not going to leave the state. Again, another chance for us to talk to them about why they should come visit us. And the other thing we can do is think about audio. Should we be messing around in Spotify and making playlists? How many playlists should we make? What should they be based on? Fall color tours, going skiing, summertime, what should they be based on? And if you're playing in the audio space, maybe you want to move to something like Clubhouse or start your own podcast. But if you know the consumer is comfortable in the car, the idea here is to get in the car with them with some content. Where in Michigan are you going to travel? Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, what do these things mean? This is the map of seemingly how we ask them, right? Central, Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, and the UP. And I'll go back to that slide real quick so you can see Northwest and UP is predominantly where people are planning on going, which opens up some conversations with consumers about where else they might think of going that maybe they haven't been before that are absolutely amazing. Then once we got to that, we wanted to ask them about their media consumption, see what sort of things they're watching, listening, those sorts of things. So the first question was, more than an hour a week in the last 6 months, with Netflix and Amazon coming in as the big winners. But we wanted to gut check this, so we found a global survey that emulated exactly what we were doing. And you can see here, Netflix and Amazon were the winners, as well as a new streaming service called Other. I'm, of course, kidding. But the point is, Netflix is where people are spending an abundance of their time. After that, we wanted to know what they were doing socially. 77% are on Facebook, followed by Instagram. The two interesting parts of this, though, friends, are Pinterest raising its hand. And if you've listened to me speak before, you know that when Pinterest raises its hand, or any app says, hey, I'm starting to catch on here, that's the time that if we're in a position to experiment, maybe we want to play around in Pinterest. The other thing you can see here is the green, the 2.6%. That is TikTok of the 2,500 that are surveyed. But I want to bring something up if you're in the travel segment and wondering how to play in the TikTok space. Now, TikTok has been the number one non-game app downloaded for most of the year. You can see where the growth happens as COVID begins to happen, as people start using TikTok more than they ever have, and some were introduced for the first time to this app. And you're starting to see pieces where consumers are watching more TikTok than they are seemingly any other video product, which means as marketers, as people who are trying to reach the customer, we need to go where the customer is. If the customer's in the car, we go there. If the customer's on TikTok, we at the bare minimum have to understand how TikTok works. And they just are in the process of rolling out something that should be fascinating to you. And this is this thing called a Spark ad. And how a Spark ad works, I was served one when Jungle Cruise came out for Disney. It works like this. So you can see that Straw Hat Goofy, who is what we would call an influencer on TikTok, he influences in the Marvel and Disney world, obviously. He gets picked up by the official Disney account for his review of Jungle Cruise because he was able to see it early. So he gives a review and they pick up that content and they serve it on their TikTok account. Now he gets the third-party validation of being picked by Disney, which of course as a creator he wants, and Disney gets the piece of content. And you can see at the bottom, there's a call to action now. He can buy tickets, you can buy tickets, she can buy tickets directly from TikTok. If you're thinking about booking rooms, I see something like this and get very excited. And the thing about TikTok that makes it frustrating for some people is what TikTok says, don't make ads, make TikTok. They're actually running a campaign now where they're redoing famous ads by TikTokers. So they're doing the Snickers ad, the Old Spice, What Your Man Could Smell Like, and the Skittles ad, and they're having influencers remake them to show brands what TikToks should look like and not taking something as a pre-roll ad or something from YouTube and just sizing it right and shoving it onto TikTok because it won't work, which can be frustrating, which is why this Spark ad seems awesome to me. So what will happen is you'll get access to influencers who want to be a part of this program and see their content that's already starting to gain traction, already using the V word, right? It's going viral, and you'll be able to interact with it and use it for your campaigns. It makes influencer marketing less of the wild, wild west because you can see the content and sort of see its trajectory, which is exciting in this space. But even if you don't want to play in this space, you got to understand it because this is where the culture is. This is where the zeitgeist right now digitally is. It starts on TikTok and radiates out. 65% of Americans have seen or interacted with a TikTok, even if they're not on the app. The other thing to think about, guys, when we're talking about marketing and we see this data from our consumer, is there's clearly a shark in the water with the update to the Apple iOS 14, known as the IDFA, Apple's privacy play. Now, what that did is invert, if you want to play catch up real quick, invert the way we were using our devices. Prior to 14.5, we would have to opt out of being tracked all over the internet. With 14.5, they're now up to 14.7, I believe, you have to opt into being tracked. And it turns out, when you ask Americans, would you like to be tracked all over the internet? It's a resounding no. 96% of Apple users 2 weeks after that was rolled out said, no, you cannot track me because you have not earned that trust, which is a bellwether for marketers to understand that we still have to work diligently to build that trust, but also sends us a message that we need to understand and control our data so that we can talk to these people and we're not reliant on these walled gardens. Especially with Google moving away from cookies, Facebook changing its ad platform. We have to have some control over our data so we don't feel like this as we're running campaigns, where we instead look at it like this: our data on the left side, our storytelling on the right, and our consumer in the middle. If you have control over your data, you can reach out to people because you've earned that right. Then you can tell them stories that will make their lives better. We call it the hero's journey, right? We can make them the hero of that marketing campaign. And then you have a relationship and they take an action and you get a conversion. Because we know that they're using their feelings first. They're moving on to story time, which we are excellent at. And then finally, they might get around to facts. And if we start building campaigns using data or asking questions like we did, what do you think about travel? Where are you going to go? How are you going to travel? And we use all of that to build robust campaigns to interact with our consumers, then we might feel like this. And with that, I will bid you a wonderful day and we'll talk again soon.